everybody, and welcome to the Millennial Revolt, an independent political talk show that seeks to bring a different narrative than the stale one we have going on right now in the mainstream media. So today we're going to be talking about what two members of Congress did and the important impact that it will have if it is passed. Now, U.S. Senator Ted Cruz and House Representatives member Ron DeSantis proposed an amendment to the Constitution that would put a cap on terms that members of Congress may serve. And President-elect Trump has also talked about this when he was campaigning. So there's so much to talk about, so let's just get right into this. Republican Senator Ted Cruz of Texas and Republican House Representative member Ron DeSantis of Florida introduced the constitutional amendment that would impose term limits on members of Congress. Ted Cruz released a statement saying that D.C. is broken. The American people resoundingly agreed on Election Day, and President-elect Donald Trump has committed to putting government back to work for the American people. It is well past time to put an end to cronyism and deceit that has transformed Washington into a graveyard of good intentions. And that's where the old saying comes from: the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I wholeheartedly support this constitutional amendment. I do hope it passes with bipartisan support and they get Democratic senators and Democratic House Representative members on board. I think it's important that our congressmen and women show the American people that they are going to put their own self-interests aside and do what's best for the American people. I think it's time we get some new blood into Washington. I think it's important that we get people in Washington, young people as well, who are basically the future of our country, involved in our government, involved in the processes and helping making laws, get fresh ideas in there, and not just keep electing the same people who give platitudes and nice words on the left and the right to issues that conservatives, libertarians, Democrats, liberals care about, and change nothing. Now, the bill that Ted Cruz and Representative Ron DeSantis proposed would limit U.S. senators to 2 6-year terms, which would mean U.S. senators would have 12 years in Congress in total. And the members of the House of Representatives would have 3 2-year terms, which means that they would have 6 years in total in the House of Representatives. Under the Constitution, senators can serve an unlimited number of 6-year terms, and members of the House of Representatives can serve an unlimited number of 2-year terms. Reformers and people who argue for constitutional limits on the number of terms that senators and congressmen can have argue that it often leads to focusing on re-elections rather than accomplishing actual goals. Now, as I said, President-elect Donald Trump on the campaign trail was very vocal about limiting U.S. senators and congressmen and women's terms in Congress. Now, back in December, a dozen senators and 36 House members signed onto a pledge to support term limits, according to a U.S. term limit advocacy group. The lawmakers agreed to co-sponsor a vote for a constitutional amendment to limit senators to 2 6-year terms and limit House members to 2 3-year terms. Now, the President-elect supports this idea, and because he supports this will give this a huge momentum to actually be pushed through. And I would hope, as I said, that this bill gets bipartisan support. Now, Trump has said that he would make term limits for members of Congress a top priority during his first 100 days in office. Amending the Constitution to implement term limits will take longer, but President-elect Trump said that he would support the efforts as part of his reform package on his first day, along with lobbying reforms. It is unclear as of this moment if President-elect Trump and his team was involved in the crafting of this bill, but this amendment was also co-sponsored by other Republicans such as Senators Deb Fischer of Nebraska, Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, Tom Tillis of North Carolina, Marco Rubio of Florida, Mike Lee of Utah, and David Perdue of Georgia. Now, as I said, I think it's extremely important for liberals to get on board with this, to show that they are willing to put aside their own feelings of President-elect Trump, whether you like him or not. The goal of any elected member of Congress is not to advance your party, but to work with your conservative and liberal members of Congress to help the American people, to create laws and to create reforms that will benefit us as a whole. My hope for this bill is that conservatives and liberals on the left and the right jump on board and support this constitutional amendment. And those who don't, it exposes them for the frauds that they are, the ideologues who they really are, and the partisan hacks for which they would appear to be. Now, I hope that the neoliberals and the neocons are exposed and that the American people wake up and wise up to the game that is being played by these certain politicians. Getting a bill passed into law is extremely different than getting a constitutional amendment. Now, after Congress proposes an amendment, the Archivist of the United States, who heads the National Archives and Records Administration, the NARA, is charged with the responsibility for administrating the ratification process under Provision 1 U.S.C. 106b. The Constitution provides that an amendment may be proposed either by the Congress with two-thirds majority vote in both the House of Representatives and the Senate, or by a constitutional convention called for by a two-thirds of the state legislators. None of the 27 amendments to the Constitution has been proposed by a constitutional convention. The Congress proposes an amendment in the form of a joint resolution. Since the President does not have the constitutional role in the amendment process, the joint resolution does not go to the White House for signature approval. And that is the difference between actually getting a bill passed and a constitutional amendment. The original document is forwarded directly to the NARA's office, which is the National Archives and Records Administration of the Federal Register, OFR, for process and publication. The Office of Federal Register, the OFR, adds legislative history notes to the joint resolution and publishes it in slip law format. The OFR also assembles an information package for the states, which includes formal red-line copies of the joint resolution, copies of the joint resolution in slip law format, and the statutory process for ratification under 1 U.S.C. 106b. A proposed amendment becomes part of the Constitution as it is ratified by 3/4 of the state, which means 38 out of 50 states. When the OFR verifies that it has received the required number of authenticated ratification documents, it drafts a formal proclamation to the archivist to certify that the amendment is valid and has become part of the Constitution. So again, I support this constitutional amendment. I think this will be a great way to try to limit the cronyism that has run rampant in Washington. I will also have a link in the description to ustermlimit.com to see the activist work that this particular organization does, how they are also trying to work on a state level to get congressional term limits implemented there as well. So I am the Millennial Revolt. Thank you guys so much for watching, and you have a wonderful day. Bye.